Hello again. Wow, 2 people here. I've got to turn off my audio monitoring and break out my live chat. Feel free to say anything to me. Over time, I will be improving my process. I know I have a little hardware and audio deficiency here, and I will be endeavoring to improve all that as I stream more, because I think I like to stream. Breaking out my chat, putting it over there, so I can now see you when you chat to me during my session. And this is going to be a much shorter and less ambitious video than the last one, basically just cleaning things up. So we did some NoSQL, no database, NoSQL. We used the built-in features of Python, namely the shell library, in order to commit stuff to hard drive with this simple 2-line command here, so that everything that was already cached one way with the cashier package is cached another way with the shelve API, so that I can step through the data and actually use it and access it as if it were a local database. And in doing that, I have created a few files in the root of the repo. So this location here, surveyor, is really the Git repo name. I do think I even have it in GitHub already. And I want to do some cleanup. These untitled's are no longer necessary. I used them to good effect, but let's start cleaning stuff up. We certainly don't need that one anymore. And this other one I just made, which I showed you how to access the contents of the database with a similar 3-liner, 2-liner if you don't include the import. And that includes file opening and closing, in fact. So anyway, we don't want that right now. It might be nice as a reminder, but I'll remember that. Crawls takes a URL as a key. I close that, and now these are Jupyter lab things. I can see what's running and quickly shut down out of the ones that are running that I don't want to use. And this test.ipynb has actually become much more significant than test. This has become the application itself, and it deserves a better name than test. And I don't think I added that even to the repo, so I am free to use Jupyter. Well, I would have, oh, that's under shutdown. The right-click changes in web browsers based on context. It's really strange. The web browser is not the beginning and end of user interfaces, as many advantages as it might bring. So I'm going to rename test to, oh, we already have a surveyor.ipynb. Let's see what's in there. I'll probably be deleting that, because I can't imagine what I have in a surveyor notebook that isn't better in tests. Oh, this is back when we were starting out in the project. That is no longer applicable. So we close it. There used to be this close and halt, and I'll have to figure out whether that's a thing anymore. But if we shut down that one, now before I start doing stuff through there, I actually want to do a Git Status. And again, I'm using real genuine Linux here. So when I use all this Git command, that's the same Git that comes down with Linux or on an apt-get Linux. So you can see how, not ready for clean Git this is right now. By the way, here's that directory I had incorrectly referred to as this one before, but this is a hidden directory that allows Jupyter Notebook and Labs to keep its checkpoints of its notebooks somewhere, and this is the one that allows Python to keep its pseudocode or compiled, pre-compiled components And generally, we want to get rid of all of that from the repo being aware of it. So we'll be adding a git ignore. This is just file maintenance, really. But the thing I will be showing here is the pathlib library, because in this file, which is soon to be surveyor.ipynb, I drop a lot of files accidentally on the root here. And I want to put these crawl files inside of there. So that means I'm going to be using a path in a place where open is being used. And anywhere you use a path, even if it's inside a directory inside your local repo, you should be using the path package from pathlib. And it goes from pathlib, import path with a capital P. And that gets you just so much magic. It extends the API of Python in ways that are rare, but often delightful when they do happen, when a library does use its inherent power to change the very syntax that a language supports. I probably shouldn't have ran that and put that in memory, because I got some file renaming coming up, including getting that out of memory. So I'm going to close everything right now but the launcher. And in Jupyter Notebook, when you close stuff, very Jupyter Lab-ish things now to get into my muscle memory. More muscle memory stuff to commit. So of course, when you're over in this land or whatever, your muscle memory basically just improves forever and things don't get yanked out from under you with such dramatic change. When you're in a web user interface or custom apps written for your platform, things do change. You are very subject to developers making decisions where you have to completely retrain yourself. I guess it can happen in the terminal with APIs changing, but it tends to happen less. Time to double check that I am streaming. Hey, 2 concurrent users. There are people there. It says YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain streaming. So I don't know if it's streaming smoothly. You guys can let me know. Maybe having a direct connection to the network is my next step, and not being on Wi-Fi. So at any rate, just a little bit of file renaming here first and getting rid of the untitled. It's easier to do this stuff from over here, and over here we also know what Git is aware of. So there's kind of like 2 file systems. I'm going to git remove surveyor. We're going to force its removal. And we are going to move, not going through the Git API. We had to go through Git in order to do that remove, but now I'm just going to be moving test.ipynb to be surveyor.ipynb. And now I'm going to git add surveyor. So that's what's now in the Git repository. And I'm going to do a git commit. File I did on live stream committed. And if I did the adding the remote head, I can do a git push. And if I set the remote origin, I believe I did. I should just be able to git push it. And there, it's going up to GitHub. Now if I do a git status, you can see I still have quite a bit of cleaning to do. Now I'm going to remove crawl.star. So it's a little less to worry about. The things that I'm going to remove SERP default. And I'm going to remove both of the untitled. I don't believe I need them anymore. Now I'm going to git add headlines, and I'm going to git add ML SEO, Git Commit. I added the support packages. Which are of my own creation, but still git push. And I'll do a before and after on GitHub so you can just see that. I like to go into GitHub by going into my Pipulate repository first. And then I can just switch repos. SURVEYOR. Okay, so the file I did on live stream is committed, but now when I hit enter on this last one, added support package, and I do a refresh here, you'll see the additional packages added and the new comments. So yeah, GitHub, really important. It's part of your education. Well, not GitHub, but Git really, but for now GitHub as well. It's how you protect your files, get them around, secure, collaborate, etc. So I say my platform is Linux, Python, Vim, and Git, and so you're going to be seeing Git pop up from time to time. Thanks, Casey. Okay, so you can see the cleaning up is going quite well. I've gotten rid of all the stuff from the repo root that I want to, but of course if I ran this again, all the cross stuff would end up in there. And there are a couple of invisible directories. So one more Git Status. You can never see this step too often because it's just part of the psychology now of doing Git stuff. But at this point, it's very typical to grab the stuff that's still showing up in your Git status that shouldn't. You don't want to be looking at that extra red when you don't have to, and then vim.git ignore. And then you just pop those, things in there. I make my little mistakes, when keyboarding around in Vim, but don't you when you mouse around in, some other environment. So the little, foibles and faux pas in Vim are no better or worse than other environments. So occasionally you'll see me issue commands in edit mode. Git add, git ignore, right? Because now you want that in there. And for command completion, you sometimes have to go a little further because there is an invisible Git directory there. And now Git Status. And you'll see I added a new file in green, but everything else is gone. Git Commit. Added Git Ignore. And this is something that you just do somewhere early at the beginning of almost every project. And I can Git push that. You don't have to push every little thing. People have different habits about how they do it. I'll leave that one around for my next push. It can go up with that. But now the thing I promised in the preview for this video, which is pathlib. I already put pathlib in my import here. And I'll go ahead and execute this. The line we're interested in here is, of course, this one, but no harm in executing everything. And I also promised to show you how the actual API of Python changes because of a simple import like that. And when I say that, the syntax, like, 1 + 1 = 2. What if you could change what the plus symbol means so that 1 + 1 = foo instead of 2? You can do that in Python. There's nothing you can't expand, override, whatever. And so some of these packages do that in interesting little ways. And this is one of the most important ones, pathlib. It's changing habits. In the past, we would have imported join from OS and a bunch of other supporting parts. But generally, all you need now to make operating system independent paths, especially relative to your GitHub repo, is the path object or the path package from the pathlib package. I mean, they're all packages, they're all objects. We'll call them what you will. But we can go down to where an actual location is referred to, which was making all, and I have some potential name collision issues, but it's not really too bad because the crawl folder, which already has a few it's specifically pickled things where I use the pickle library directly to keep a track of some simple list management. This next one is going to be the shelf API, the data for the shelf API, which creates a number of files that I don't explicitly control, and they're also going to be named crawl the way I have it right now. See this string literal? When I say string literal, it's redundant, but it's the habit people have gotten in to refer to when you're not using a variable or a reference name. It usually is in single or double quotes. It's usually color-coded differently by whatever tool you're using, and it is a exact value. It's not one that dynamically changes. So we're going to, it won't dynamically change, but we are going to set it once up here. We're going to have something along the lines of a configuration. By the way, this takes a little long to execute because that's being fetched out of the cache. That is no longer applicable. So we get rid of that. However, we do want another line. Escape, Shift A. No, Escape A. Got to get my keyboard shortcuts down. I should have done B for below. And now to move these around, you drag them. There's a lot of new stuff to get used to in Jupyter Labs. It's the future of Jupyter Notebook. And it's worth doing. It's worth getting used to. Now it's a bit more overhead. It's doing more. And this is going to be the crawl path. These underscores are arbitrary. But when I told you, well, before I even set crawl path, I'm going to show you what path dot, because remember it's imported, it's in memory, CWD is, current working directory. It knows where my repo is. It's where I am. So path dot CWD is this surveyor directory, which is the same as here, which is the same as here. And you start to see how hygiene, file hygiene is important. Now, for security reasons, if you're doing web development, there's other hygiene issues, because if anything is in web space, where you put stuff here has tremendous implications on security. But if you're doing back-end work and it's just Jupyter Notebook stuff on your drive and it may not even end up even on a server ever, you don't have to worry about that. You make everything relative to your GitHub repo because it is easy to find. Easy to find, new APIs. What the heck am I talking about? Well, this would normally be divided by, right? Divided by crawl. Current working directory divided by crawl equals the crawl directory? Really? It dealt with the // issues? Yes, indeed. It's all just magically taken care of for you here. So this is an operating system dependent because it's operating system aware, independent, operating system independent because it's operating system aware way of setting a location. So this shall be my crawl path, crawl data path, crawl path, I don't know, crawl path equals, not divided by in that case. So now we're sitting on a variable that's called crawl path that is that awesome way of specifying locations on your system, which goes here instead of the string literal crawl. Now I'm leaving one thing out because that is just a path. It's only referring to crawl, but we want files to end up in there by a certain name. So you can't just open a path. You need to open an actual file. So the temptation is to do it inside the string crawl/crawl. No! The API is the crawl. Let it handle conversions. One crawl for the directory, one crawl for the file name. Now you have something that will go in here quite nicely and allow your files to end up in here, before and after, right? Before just those 3 files. And a nice clean directory here. Let's go through and do our running. Again, never any harm in just plowing through and rerunning this stuff because of the way the caches are working. Okay, we've got an error. Unsupported type for Windows path and string. That's fine. It's going to be the thing I just did. I'm going to have to get something a little bit more correct in the way I'm specifying that. It still might be a path. Let's see what crawl path is equal to. Yeah, I wonder if it's in that error. Unsupported operand type for Windows path and string. So I'm trying to do something between a Windows path and a string somewhere. And again, we scan up in these little files until we find the file name we recognize. A lot of this stuff is going to be taking place in parts of the system. And look, there's DBM. So it is the DBM database that's handling the key value database portion of this under Anaconda lib. Interesting. Shelf.py. So we have to go all the way up here until, okay, so with shelf open crawl path as crawls. So it's that final crawl which is being interpreted as part of the path, because the open should certainly all work on everything except, let's see, where I am /crawl puts it inside of there. /crawl should be another now I'm going to try using that as the path here. Open crawl path. See, I'm tempted to do the exact same thing here. Doing this is the same thing as what I was doing up there. A Windows path and then the file name. Yeah, same error because I'm saying exactly the same thing. So the shelf API, I need to check that to see. It may be incompatible with pathlib objects, and that would be terrible. I hate that. because just crawl by itself works here. Now, this is the dangers of a live video. The whole purpose of this video and the wonderful advantages of using the new pathlib is in question by a discovery I'm making, which is that this object here, which specifies exactly what it's supposed to, cannot be used down here because of an incompatible type, Windows path and string. Okay, so it's expecting a string, so you know it's Python, right? So let's see what happens if we throw str around this. Yeah, handles all the // stuff, and it is exactly what we need, right? So because it's aware of everything, because it's converting to a Windows path, it knows to put all that stuff in there. So string crawl path is what we're going to be using, and my original thought about creating a crawl path through appending with this wonderful API that pathlib gives you is absolutely correct. I just got to do a string conversion first because the API of shelve open does not support path objects yet. Pathlib objects, path objects from pathlib. And so now those very same files should be getting created side by side with the .pkl files, and there they are. There's your before and after. And we've done a nice bit of cleanup. And if I were to do a Git Status over here, you'll see that all that's reported is the changes that I did to Surveyor and not the things that reside in the crawl directory, because the crawl directory is in my git ignore, right? That's why new files being dropped in there doesn't make those show red here. And when I say you got to learn Linux, Python, Vim, and Git, you see I'm using Git as a real casual, personal, unlimited undo, documenting my work tool. I don't even have to collaborate with anyone. Git commit, all files, message. Now I could just do the git commit on the one file I edited, but I'm in the habit of doing AM. So if I edited multiple files, this comment's going to go on every file I edited. But in this case, it's just going on this one. So, you know, what did I just do? I used pathlib to drop crawl data into crawl folder. And that's what I wanted to show you on this live video, Git push. It's going to help you immensely, making sure that your files end up in the right place. And on that whole efficiency front, the thing to keep in mind is, once again, how much I got for how little. So for people who did this kind of work before, you might be familiar with how ugly statements like this can actually end up being when you have to use os.join to join multiple fragments. And it's just ugly, ugly code. And by Python stepping in and saying, in this context, when you're using the divide symbol or the / symbol after an occurrence of the path object, then use that to append together these parts of the path and return an appropriate object for the operating system, so that when you ask for it in different formats, it can step in and do the conversion to whatever / format is necessary. So when you just print the object itself, it's going to be a Windows path. But if you were to get the string of that same thing, it handles the / conversions. And when you code this way, you make your code operating system independent. It'll work on Linux as well as Windows, and wherever you happen to be. And of course, being in such a multi-platform environment such as I am, I can always just lift this up and try executing the same code under here using the Python that's built into Ubuntu, I guess 8.14 that I'm on, LSB release-a. I don't think I can do a video without doing at least one LSB 18.04. Got the name wrong. So I'm on Ubuntu 18.04, and I've got Python over here. I've got Python over here in Jupyter Lab/Notebook as part of the Anaconda install. And I've also got Python in this third place, which is under the standard Microsoft command window, which was installed by the Microsoft Store. But you have a lot of contexts under which to execute Python, and you can test them all. And when you use operating system independent coding styles, like I just did, they work anywhere. So you saw the Windows / version there. So the only new thing probably would be if I were to run Python here on Linux side, import it's from pathlib, import path, and import path. And one of the first things you'll see that's different is if I were to go path, I got to actually print it. This is not Jupyter. Print path.cwd, current working directory. It's going to be a Linux style / where Windows happens to map this directory on my system, but nonetheless, that path command resulted in C:\\\/ on Windows side. So if I were to run the same code in both places, all the paths would be magically and automatically corrected. So that's what I wanted to show you on this video. And so thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon, and don't forget to subscribe.